It's Friday again. Can you believe it? These weeks just fly on by. And we're here again to do what? Kicking it old school. That's right.
So where is everybody? Nobody's here.
There's plenty of people here. Look, there's plenty of people here.
We've got a room full.
Let's see what we got in here. We got some people in the chat right now. My system is actually, what is this? My selector vision over here is not working. So, Stephen, why don't you start talking to our guest while I fix this over here? There's always some problems.
Well, I will introduce our guest. His name is Tony Cruz, not related with Tom Cruise or Terry Crews.
Tom Saltonate.
Yeah, exactly. And it is 10 a.m. in his neck of the woods right now in Tasmania. So he's in the land down under, and he's been gracious enough to spend his Saturday morning, because it's in the future over there, with us. So give him a big warm welcome, and yeah. So welcome, Tony. Let's see if Glenn's gonna get this stuff fixed first.
Perhaps. There's always, look, I got people saying hello, and it's in the wrong spot. Look at this, it's all the way up here. We got to bring it down over to here for a moment. There we go. So we have some people in the chat. Everyone's saying hello. Happy Friday. We have Kongs in here as well.
TGIF is all I have to say.
Oh, yeah.
Thank God it's Friday, yeah. Well, I said mine is thank God it's Saturday. But
yes, and everybody wished Tony a happy birthday, because it was his birthday today/yesterday for him.
Yes.
So I didn't want to mess that up. So he's an old guy like us.
Yeah.
He loves the
Definitely.
80s. And yeah. So Tony has been on YouTube for a super long time. What year did you start your YouTube, your electric adventure in YouTube?
Well, I sort of discovered, it's about 12 years ago, I think. So talking, what does that make it? 2000, I can't do math. 2010, 2009.
That's a pioneer in YouTube years, isn't it?
Yeah, so I yeah, I just started. I started obviously watching YouTube, and started dragging stuff out of storage and saying, oh, yeah, I'll start joining this one. Of course, my videos were pretty low quality to start with.
Well, you always got to start somewhere, because we don't want to go out and buy $6,000 worth of camera equipment, and then your YouTube career comes to a grinding halt, and then you're stuck yard sailing the stuff at a quarter of the price, right? So it's...
Oh, exactly.
You just want to... You start off small, and when I get mine started, it'll be the same thing, where you baby steps and then spend more money as time progresses.
You got to save the money for the wheelchairs and the crutches.
And the dentures.
That's right. Yeah, especially when you fall over the other crap, you know. So you've got to...
So Tony, that's how him and I met. Basically, I was watching his YouTube channel like a year and a bit, and then he sent me a friend request on Facebook, because we knew the similar people, and then we just became friends. So it's pretty cool. His channel has stuff for retro computers from A to Z, and essentially all kinds of other stuff too. Like, we're going to talk about that later, but Laserdiscs and exploring that rabbit hole, which I'm not terribly familiar with, other than having one Laserdisc video game, but that's about it. But
it wasn't Dragon Slayer Space Ace. It was something else.
Yeah, Cliffhanger. That's all I have. I bought it on eBay like 15 years ago for $50 or something like that, and I've had it ever since. So, but tell us more. What have you been up to with either YouTube, or you do programming too? So we'll let you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I've been being a developer for software developer for like 37 years now. So in the early 80s, I discovered computers. I was actually doing rocketry and advanced science at my high school, and one of my friends suggested we go and have a look at the school computer. The school computer was a dumb terminal to what was called the Elizabeth Computing Centre, and it just opened a world for me, and I started playing with that. And then I'd already gone to various retail stores and played with the computers there. So you took TRS-80s and various clones and things like that. And then I sold all of my toys. So you're talking my Lego, my Fisher Technics, my Meccano, all this sort of thing. And I went in halves with my father, and we bought a TI 99-4.
Hey, four, not a 4A?
A 4, yes. The one with the chiclet keyboard, uppercase, characters
okay, I'm
only.
out. You're talking Glenn's language now.
And it was a wonderful little machine. We bought it secondhand. I think it cost $650 Australian, of which my father paid $300, I think, and I paid $350, and $350 was the total of all of my toys. His one thing of putting that money in was he was allowed to play with it. So the answer to the question of where's Dad was usually that he was in the study playing TI Invaders on the Texas Instruments.
Oh, so he was a gamer.
Yeah.
And TI Invaders was a good port. The TI had a good port of Space Invaders.
Oh, the Space Invaders on the TI. That is a wonderful... It's Space Invaders with a little bit of extra in it, so it makes it more entertaining.
Who made that? Who
TI Invaders?
programmed that?
TI Invaders was actually programmed by TI itself. TI...
Yes, so Texas Instruments released that game as part of their library, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah, one of the launch games.
Right. They couldn't say Space Invaders. They didn't have an actual license, so it was TI Invaders. They had Munchman, which was Pac-Man, but a little different. You laid a chain down.
The other game I had was Munchman. So the only two games I had was Munchman and TI Invaders.
One was a Space Invaders clone. The other one's a Pac-Man clone.
Yeah, I had no other money. I didn't have any other money other than what I could get out of paper.
We were all poor at young ages.
Now, did you?
Exactly. So that was it.
Did you program Basic on that or Extended Basic on that? Did you do any programming on the TI?
Well, I did, but I only had the normal Basic, which is incredibly slow on that machine.
Yep.
The guy was supposed to give me the Advanced Basic cartridge as part of the deal. And he said, "Oh, look, I'm going to get another one with my new machine," because he was buying the latest TI 99-4A. That's why he was selling his 4. But he never gave it to me. So, and he disappeared.
Nice.
So,
yeah, love those. Happens on Facebook Marketplace all the time.
Well, he as he saw the basic interpreter on the TI, even the extended basic was slow. It was the first 16-bit home console, but it was kind of a mishmash of 8-bit and 16-bit CPU. But the interpreter was so slow. I mean, a 2-bit computer can probably beat it in basic.
And
just bad architecture.
The machine itself is not slow. So in the right hands, games written for it are actually quite good.
In assembly language, if you do it in assembly language.
In assembly language, yes. Yeah. And it introduced me to the underlying video hardware, which is the TI 9918 processor. And that obviously had its 32 hardware sprites and quite high resolution graphics. I think the TI 9994 only had the 4K of video RAM, and the 4A introduced the 16K video RAM. So you didn't have the true high res mode.
Right, and you also only had lowercase characters. There was no upper and lowercase difference. It was all the same.
Yes, that's right. And the chiclet keyboard, which wasn't too bad. But I wrote a couple of games with my friends. I remember some programming parties with my friend. And we wrote a game, not really a game, just a simulation of a Saturn V rocket taking off and losing stages and then getting to the moon and landing. It took us ages to program this thing, and we had to do it more than once because it got hot and the computer crashed.
Oh.
We had to save the tape.
Wasn't that fun?
Oh yeah,
that machine was notorious for that, or wasn't?
No, it was just it can actually, funny enough, even though we are the island below the island in Tasmania, we're close to the Antarctic. It does actually get hot in some summers here. So
the TI was infamous because the cartridge slot was over the PSU and that little tray. People thought it was for your coffee.
Yes.
If you tapped that, sometimes that would cause it to freeze because the cartridge had a right angle connector in it. So if it was going to freeze, or the speed synthesizer on the side, because it had sidecars, that can cause it to freeze. But other than that, it was pretty solid.
Yeah, and I remember being blown away when I went and picked mine up because the guy that I bought it off had all the sidecar stuff. So he had a whole desk. The TI could just expand out to the right, for a couple of meters if you wanted it to.
Is that many add-ons for this?
The TI did. I mean, they had
almost like an
R230.
500. You just keep
exactly. You had the same type of bus. It would keep going, but again, the further you went, the greater chance of you hitting something, and then no, I'm programmed for 2 weeks and it's frozen. But
what was the medium to save stuff? Was it floppy disks, was cassette, or?
Well, I only had a cassette, and I had a decent tape player. It was all right. But there were disk drives for it even back then.
Yep.
Really? This guy actually had one of those. So obviously, he was a few years older than me. I would have only been about 14, 15. He probably would have been in his 20s or something like that, right? So
the TI you had, they came out.
A fair bit of
when you had the 4 was like the sidecars, and the 4A could still use those sidecars. But then they came out with what's called the peripheral expansion box. And what was thing about TI was TI wasn't about cost cutting like Commodore. Like Commodore was trying to find every single way they could to cut costs, including using cardboard spray to be an RF shield. The TI was like IBM. It was a tank. That peripheral expansion box, Indiana Jones could have climbed into that in that movie and survived the nuke. I mean, that peripheral expansion box was a tank. But when TI left the market, they were giving them away. You bought like a couple of games or give you a 60-pound peripheral expansion box, and you bought cards then at that point.
They're losing so much money on every unit just to get units out there at the end.
Right.
So
right.
Wow.
You know why that happened, right? Commodore.
They released a speaking.
Yeah, Commodore lowered their price.
Yeah.
Yes,
the reason was TI at the time was made calculator chips, and Commodore was making calculators up left and right. And TI goes, wait a second. We can make the whole calculator. Why do we got to sell it to them? So they jacked the prices up to Jack Tramiel, for calculators. And then he got pissed. All right, fine. I'm going to make a computer. And then when TI came out, I'm going to bury you. I don't care what I need to do for my computer. I'm going to bury TI. And he did. He basically forced him out of the market.
Damn. Smart guy.
Ruthless guy.
And, so after a while, I obviously got a little, limited. I obviously had the programming bug and needed something else. So then I looked around. There were many options around, many I couldn't afford. We had Apples down here. There was the VIC-20. We had the Micro B. Now, a lot of your listeners might know what the Micro B is. It was actually a machine that was designed and made in Australia, Z80 based. The model that when I was looking that I could afford was black and white only. They didn't add colour to that machine until a little later. So looking at prices, so I could afford maximum $300, and that was once again all the money that I had.
Is that $1 million in today's money, or
probably? Yeah.
It's probably at least $1,000.
The VIC-20, I think, was $299 with an 8K expansion cartridge, and I really liked the the name's the one that's like Rally X but with mice.
Oh, not Mappy.
Radar,
not Mappy. What's it, Mappy?
Is it Radar Rat Race? No?
Yes, I think it's Radar Rat Race. Pretty sure.
Right, so obviously,
not 100% sure.
I love that. I looked at it and went, oh, that basic's a bit primitive. Right, the Micro B had a better basic, but once again, black and white. Right, so I was a little bummed there. And then there was the Spec Video 318. It had the similar chip as the Texas Instruments. It had a Z80. It had what sounded like heaps of RAM at the time, which is 16K of CPU RAM and 16K of video RAM. It had a lovely red joystick in the right-hand side of the keyboard.
It was built in.
That was nice. Right, rubber keyboard. And I was excited about it and talking to it. The store owner said, oh, she realised that, oh, you seem to know more about these computer things than I do. Would you,
Back
what do you
then,
reckon?
that's what it was. Us kids were the geniuses back then.
Yeah, and he had Atari 400s and 800s on the shelves, but they were nice machines, but they were quite expensive. And he had Atari 2600s and Intellivisions in the store. And he said, and the ColecoVision had come out,
which architecture was very similar to the TIs. I mean, it was the same graphics chip, sound chip, memory. It was just a
correct, because everybody was buying chips off Texas Instruments, right? And he said, oh, look, if you help me out, I'll sell you one for $199. Massive discount back in the day, so I'm in, right? And you got Spectron, which is like a Space Invaders type game, and Armored Assault were the two games you got with it, plus a couple of productivity things, and a tape player. And I was off and racing and started writing games for that. And in the basic in that, you could write pretty decent games. And what were the games that I started writing? Well, they're probably all the ones I was playing on the Atari 2600 at the time.
That's funny.
Or in the arcades. So I just started writing those games, and I started there was a users group magazine, and they had listings. I typed some listings in, and I think by the third issue, there was a listing there by Tony Cruz. And that kept on. And after a little while, it was, we're going to have this club tape library and things. I went, well, I could do that. I could put my games on tape. So I started making these things called program packs. I've already written quite a few games by this stage. So I've gathered games together. So my very first program pack was Lunar Lander, Galactic Assault, and Road Racer, and a sprite editor. So 4 things on a tape. Probably sold for $5 or something like that. And
good summer money.
Now on that machine, can you type in the name and it would search a tape for that game, or we just had to kind of? It did.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I had I simplified, because confusion over the run commands on Spectre Video and MSX is a thing, because there are so many different commands. So I used the run CAS one, and that loaded a menu. Then you selected your title, and then it searched for the one on the tape.
Very nice. That makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, so you could have name titles on the tape. And also the baud rate for the Spectre Video was actually quite high in comparison to other machines of the time. So it didn't actually take long to load games. And
so you focused on that machine for a while, essentially. Well, that's cool.
And I by that, and once I'd written a few games, I started playing about the idea. So in the And I got the idea from the TI. In TI at Advanced Basic, you have 32 sprites. And you have the idea that you can give a sprite a position, colour, shape, but you could also give it an X and Y velocity. And it would just move automatically. So
that was all built in.
That was built into Advanced Basic, yes.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
So I went, I need that, so I wrote a little bit of machine code that hooked into BASIC and moved sprites around automatically. So one of the first things I did was a game called Hopper. No prizes for guessing what that may or may not be a clone of. And it is actually quite a passable version of Frogger.
Oh, it's Frogger, okay.
Where all of the objects are all moving smoothly back and forth. And written in BASIC with just a teeny little bit of machine code.
Which machine was this on now?
This is the Spectre Video 318.
Okay, gotcha.
You have one of those, Glenn?
I don't, but I've always wanted one. Like I said, that red joystick always drew me in on that machine. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful looking machine.
Oh, and it was very well built. The other thing that attracted me to this thing was they had a whole series of stuff, just like the TI, if you know what I mean. They had disk drives and graphics tablets and even a robot arm that you could control with the computer and everything like that.
You know what teenage boys would do with a robot arm and a computer?
This is a family show, Glenn.
You shake hands with it. What are you thinking?
Yeah.
Pick up.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So then you moved up beyond that. Did you go Amiga? Did you go somewhere else? Did you?
Next was the MSX.
Very popular machine.
So basically, the Spectre Video machines, Z80 based with the Texas Instruments graphics processor and a different sound chip to some of the others. It doesn't have a Texas Instruments sound chip. Was basically put forward as the model design for the MSX in Japan. Because Spectre Video's BASIC was written by 2 Spectre Video technicians and 2 Microsoft technicians. So they'd already started a relationship with Microsoft. And it was the very latest version of Microsoft's BASIC at the time. So it has everything that's in Microsoft BASIC. So even the TRS-80 Coco's BASIC is the version before the version that's on the Spectre Videos. And they had a relationship with a guy in Japan called Nishi, who was Bill Gates' friend and ended up getting the dealership for Microsoft in Japan. And he went around and talked to all of these Japanese companies and said, hey, why don't we do a computer standard? And Bill Gates was into the idea at the time. So this is before PCs, became a thing. And that's what Bill Gates did. He bet on 2 standards. It was the MSX standard for the home and IBM PC standard for business.
MSX didn't go too far all over the place. Like it went far, but not.
Yeah, it was very popular in Japan. It was the standard computer there, and it spread out to other areas in the world, but it was mainly confined to Japan.
Real quick, guys, I'm sorry, I don't know why it's not coming up in the chat, but we did get a super chat from Hobby Hands. I just want to read that real quick. It's a question. It's a question for the group. I just picked up another one of my holy grails, the SX64. Executive, do you guys have a holy grail you have not been able to get? As always, a great show. So what Holy Grail systems, whether it be a computer or a console, have you guys wanted and have not been able to obtain yet? Great question.
So the SS64, if I'm not mistaken, that's the Commodore 64 portable.
Yep. I almost got my hands on one of those myself, but didn't do it. Didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah, apparently a bunch of problems happened with it, but yeah. It's you go ahead, Tony. I'll go after.
I was going to say I've seen one of those, and I'd actually visit. I haven't done a collection. I have over 120 different systems squirted away in this room. So I do have most of my grails, and I've been collecting anything with the TI graphics chip in it. And I have pretty much most of those. There are lots of MSX models, so I'm not going to be insane and collect the 50 or 60 different MSX1 models, but and I'd actually put that SX64 higher on my list because I don't have one of those. And I've been spouting MSX for a while, but I do actually quite like the Commodore machines as well. But it's probably an Amiga 3000.
Are they hard to come by in Australia?
That's a nice machine.
The Amiga 3000s, the Amiga line?
I've got pretty much every other model, but I don't have a 3000. And this has been one of my machines that I've wanted for quite some time because it's the pinnacle of the Amiga line. So,
what about you, Stephen? What's your machine?
I don't know if I have a holy grail. There's a few machines I wouldn't mind getting my hands on, like an Amiga 4000. I wouldn't mind getting my hands on. But again, I've got a 2000, so it's kind of.
So just get two of those.
But on the yeah, I wouldn't mind an SX64. The only thing that bothers me about it is the small color screen, and as we get older,
was the charm.
The eyesight's not too good, and you need these, glasses. So it would be nice to have one of those for sure. But I've got like 3 Commodore 64, so I'm not saying I don't have a holy grail thing, but at this point, holy grail for me is more in the Star Wars department versus like I want the Jabba the Hutt Kenner playset. That's what I want. That's kind of like my holy grail. From a console PC standpoint, I've got the stuff that I've always wanted. Like the big one was an Amiga CD32, and I ended up getting that at a dentist office. And Glenn knows the story, and I think I've told Tony the story too. The dentist had it right there, and he's like, "Yeah, you want it?" I was like, "Yeah, of course I want it." So, and then I left with it, and that was it. So there's more details, but I won't bore everybody with it. But yeah. So, so Tony here has got a Laserdisc collection.
Oh, just a little bit.
Now this is like old stuff, unless he wants to keep going with the computer stuff. But I think a lot of people in the chat will lose their minds on Laserdisc stuff, and some people may or may not know what that is. But let us know what you've got or what you've been doing in the Laserdisc world there.
Well, I've actually had Laserdisc for quite a long time. I was a hi-fi nut. So when I started properly working, a lot of my money went towards getting usually Yamaha, high-quality audio stuff. And the Holy Grail was. I ended up doing PC support work for people and a little bit of programming as well. And I formed a relationship with a hi-fi store. So I had like long laybys where they'd let me have the gear and I'd play the stuff off over a long period of time. And one of the grails at the time was a Yamaha Laserdisc player. And I eventually got one of those because one of the important things people don't know, the best quality version of Star Wars, before people started tinkering with it digitally, the very best version is on Laserdisc. So the best quality version of the unaltered Star Wars movies are on the Laserdisc versions.
The widescreen, everything.
Widescreen, pixel, beautiful. And a lot of people, so when DVDs came along a little bit after Laserdisc, we actually lost a little bit of video quality because DVDs introduced compression. Whereas Laserdisc, it's the raw, unaltered frames coming off the Laserdisc. There's 2 different formats. There's CAV and CLV. Right. So constant angular velocity and constant linear velocity. Constant angular velocity, you basically get a frame on a track. Right? Wow. So you can only get 30 minutes aside, but you can still frame. And they're perfect still frames. So as far as collecting Laserdiscs, if movies you really, really love, if you want to get the best version, you get the CAV version because the picture quality is just awesome.
I've got a technical question for you that I don't know the answer to, actually.
Yeah, go for it.
What is the best output you can get? I'm sure it's not HDMI, but is S-Video?
S-Video.
S-Video.
Or component?
S-Video is going to be the best if you have a TV that does it.
Okay. I just didn't know what came out when it died, kind of thing. You know what I mean? What was the last?
I do believe some players you can get RGB.
Yeah, mods.
Off. You've got to tap in.
Off the chip itself.
As a matter of fact, we were talking before the show. I have a Laser Active, and just in the past couple of weeks, they just released an RGB mod for that. But it's weird. It'll give you the RGB out on like the Sega Genesis or TurboGrafx pack, but it doesn't do it on the actual Laserdisc movies. Yeah, it's kind of a bummer.
Different chip, I guess, or
way it's tapped. But for the most part, S Video
Yeah.
gave a really good. They did give a really good picture out on it. If you had a good player.
It does.
So
yes.
S video is the best. What about audio? Is it just
No, they had
stereo
Dolby.
or is it optical or not optical? I
Yeah,
guess.
no. It does depend on the lasers. Once again, only so much room. You only had room for one lot of audio data. So if you want AC3, you need to buy the disc that has AC3 in it. That's why there are so many different versions.
So there is
of
a
disc.
digital track, I guess,
Mm.
on it that would let you decode AC3 Dolby Digital audio.
Correct. Depends on
Oh,
the
wow,
laserdisc.
I didn't know that.
Once again, so and it was called AC3 in Laserdisc. It wasn't called Dolby
Right.
Digital
Right.
until the DVDs came out. So DVDs will launch you a big hurrah with Dolby Digital on
Gotcha.
there. Now,
Interesting.
some Laserdisc players have most of them only has stereo out, but some players have inbuilt a analog PCM port. And some can be modified to have an analog PCM port, so non-optical. So coaxial,
interesting.
coaxial audio out, but that's fine. You can use coaxial.
It'll
into
do
a
what,
good amp.
5.1 or?
Yep,
ish?
5.1. Yep.
Okay, that's cool. Wow.
So I used to use as my demo disc to my friends when they came around was the explosion at the start of Star Trek 6 of the
Practice.
planet Praxis. Yeah, when Praxis explodes at the start of that movie on that laser disc, that's the sound, right? It's either that or the THX logo
Oh
on
man.
Terminator 2.
Oh, yeah, that's
Oh.
amazing. I've
Right?
heard
And
it
THX
in...
was invented for laserdiscs, right? So they were the ones where they gave a crap about and they did a proper transfer from the. This is where all these great original transfers from the movies, the original film, have come from. That process, that whole THX process, has come from the laserdisc world.
I don't even know if I have S video anything to play.
I've only got
back
one TV.
anymore.
I have one TV that has one TV that has it.
What are you
But
running for a setup, Tony? Is it a projector? Is it a TV? Is it a...
So I have in my main lounge room we have so I've got a projector and a screen, and I've got a 4K Samsung TV. The Laserdisc on the 4K Samsung TV actually is quite good, and it handles the cropping and position of the picture quite well.
Oh, wow.
But obviously, if you put it on to a projector, it's not going to be as you get a little bit of fuzzing, if you know what I mean, and that's good because obviously you've got a certain resolution that it's at, whereas it can be a little bit too crisp on the 4K TV sometimes. I usually use the projector. And you do have different aspect ratios, so sometimes you can get a little bit of a funny position, but other than that, I normally sit there. It's normally me watching these particular movies by myself. They're not necessarily family things, or I got a copy of Back to the Future on Laserdisc.
That's my movie.
The whole family watched that, and we actually went on and watched the other two together, which is great.
You got to watch the other two when you start, kind of thing. It's kind of like a can of worms,
And I like old original sci-fi movies, and the best quality version of those you're going to get is the Laserdisc version. So finding a Laserdisc version of an original old sci-fi movie is the bomb to me. So cool. I found the original H.G. Wells' Time Machine, and it really is a fantastic version of the film and still enjoyable. My younger daughter, who's into physics and is into, is looking at time theory and all these sort of things to watch. She actually was quite interested in watching that, so it was good watching that with her. And you watch that movie and then you see all the things that other people have borrowed from it.
Well, yeah.
Right? Up until this watch, it's taken me all this time. I didn't realise that Doctor Who's scarf came from Time Machine.
What year was that movie?
That was Doctor Who's. I'd have to look it up, but it's
ballpark 40s, 50s.
60s? Early 60s. And what's funny, we were talking again before the show that you had VHS and you had Betamax and you had Laserdisc, and we were talking before about the RCA Select-O-Vision that people thought was a Laserdisc, but it was not a Laserdisc. It actually was very similar to an LP record. It was pressed like an LP record, and actually did have a stylus, and it used not the Hall effect. I forgot the terminology that they used here. capacitance. It used capacitance to store the same amount of video on each side, an hour each side, as an LP, basically. But it would wear out. I think it was something like 30 viewings, and then it was done.
You're done.
I think that's what killed it more than VHS versus beta. It just didn't work.
Well, think about it. You could play a vinyl record way more than that. And a movie, it's like, yep, too bad. Thanks for coming.
Well, see, with an LP, you would probably hear some static on there. It didn't bother you too much. But with video, you're getting freeze frames. You're getting snow. If you don't want to see that in your video, not when you're trying to do it. But the plus side was it was a lot cheaper than a Laserdisc player. So that was the plus side.
Yeah.
But you know what still kills me more than anything? They had all those Laserdisc players back in the day, and they had remote controls. But they never released like Dragon's Lair or Space Ace for just like a Laserdisc player. They did it with DVD players, where the quality was, again, not the same. They could have released literally Dragon's Lair, Space Ace, all those games back in the day, and they never did.
But was there logic on those devices? Like on a DVD player, you can do programming within the DVD world, so to speak. But I think those laser discs, they were kind of
could have
dumb
been.
a little bit,
I guess that could be a reason why.
Where the laser needs to jump around when you're dying or whatever, the death sequence, and then it jumps to the whatever track or whatever. That would be my guess from a.
I've got some news for you guys.
Let's hear it.
We're going to go back to MSX.
Let's go.
If you couple an MSX with certain MSXs with a Laserdisc player, there are games that are laser interactive games, and one of them is Dragon's Lair.
So, but did you have to have that particular player? I mean, you had a very specific Laserdisc player that had a serial port on it, right?
Yes.
Was the quality the same as the actual video kind of thing, or?
Well, I've never seen the MSX version of Dragon's Lair, but I believe it's pretty close to the arcade games. There's not much modification.
Well, a funny fact is that the Atari 7800 originally had an expansion port on it, and it was originally to interface with Laserdisc players, but obviously it kind of fell out of hat, if you will. So it never really happened.
Mm-hmm. And
even your lovely TI-99, well, the 4A, the 4 didn't have, but the 4A actually had a Genlock signal. So it had the ability to do that type of thing. But again, I don't think it was ever really used, but it had the ability.
Yeah, that's the 9918A.
Correct.
That's the enhancement, and that's the one that has the 16K
Correct.
RAM. It has an external video feed in, which was a thing some MSX machines supported and others didn't. So it's the Pioneer machines, and I've got one of the Pioneer machines. I have a PAL version of that machine, unfortunately. You actually really need an NTSC, because obviously the Laserdiscs are in NTSC. So I can use, and I have a Pioneer player, so I can hook them both up and I can control the player with the computer, just that I get black and white. I don't get colour because I've got the wrong chip in my MSX. And it has an overlay one. I've got another I'm getting my brands mixed up. So sorry, Panasonic is that one, and I have another Pioneer one that also model that also has the overlock capability. Sony machines, later ones, had the overlock as well.
Now, how have you found the reliability on your players? Have you had any issues? I haven't had any on mine. Mine have been working fine.
They're mainly mechanical things, right?
Belt.
So they need you've got a lot of moving things. You've got belts stretch. You have gears in there. They need greasing, right? Especially the Panasonic one. The reason why I use that one as my main player, it's not quite as good as my Yamaha one. It definitely has the best picture quality, hands down. But it doesn't flip discs, right? So if you're watching a movie, you've got to get up physically.
Right. So tell people a little bit about that, because kids today with DVDs are not going to understand this. Explain that a little bit, because I never had one that did that by itself.
So there's physical stuff stored on each side of the disc. Your heads are on one side, so you quite literally have to take the disc out, flip it over, put it down without putting your fingers on it. Very important thing. So
fingerprints would make it bug out.
It could skip.
Yeah. That
problem.
And put it in and change. So if you're CAV, that's every 30 minutes. That's hard yakka. With CLV, which is what most of my collection is, that's almost an hour per side. So most of the time with a automatic flipper. And a flipper, it doesn't flip the disc. It actually takes the heads and they go and
Does it really?
Reverses the rotation of the disc. So it's got a brake and it spins it the other way and then off it goes. So you've got about, I'd say about a 15, 20 second delay when it flips the disc, but that's, you know,
and it was, isn't it loud?
Getting up.
Isn't it like you hear a lot of clicking and clanking when it does that?
Oh, it makes lots of noise when it does it. Yeah, it's an experience. It's part of.
It is. Now, Paul says something right here. It explains why DVD adoption was so quick. That's not why DVD adoption was so quick. Does anyone know how and why DVD adoption happened so quick? But that was not the reason. See if anyone knows in the chat. See if you guys know. Why was DVD adoption so quick? It definitely was not due to the Laserdisc.
Because
I know this answer and I forgot.
Sony added DVD playback to their PS2.
Ding, 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 ding. That's exactly it. DVDs were not selling well at all until the PS2 came to market. And think about how expensive PS2 was back in the day, and that was the cheapest DVD player you could get, but it was also a game console.
Correct.
Once that happened,
and then the Xbox had the remote later. Also, GameCube didn't do it.
But that's what also killed the Dreamcast.
But if you had the
Dreamcast died because of that.
Q, you could play DVDs.
Yep. Well, the Dreamcast would have survived too.
DVD format with reduced distance.
Since that PS2 came out and DVDs are flying off the shelves, a lot of video stores started carrying PS2s in Japan. That made it sell more than the Dreamcast, and Dreamcast fell behind, and so it killed the Dreamcast and
killed the Xbox and the GameCube.
But the PS2 is what made DVDs really take off because they were not selling very well at all. People were kind of happy with the Laserdiscs. They were happy with hi-fi VHS tapes. And they had hi-fi video, which wasn't bad on VHS. Wasn't as good as Laserdisc. But DVD players were so expensive. People just like, it's good enough.
There was no real war, I think, in the DVD times. Was there? No real, kind of like what I'm saying by war, beta, VHS. Yeah, it just came out and everybody accepted it. And then later on we had the HD DVD and Blu-ray war. And then we all know who won that war. But basically, DVD, it looks like there was no competition.
There was a little bit, but not here. Again, in Japan and in China, they had video discs, which was like the Laserdisc type of disc on a CD. So the quality wasn't there. It was more of like an analog.
It's the video CDs that the Amiga CD32 can actually play, right?
They're exactly the one,
with the MPEG.
Correct. So they were cheaper than DVDs, and people were like, "It's good enough. I get an hour on each side." The quality was like VHS quality on a CD side. So there was a war, and actually they're still around today. And DivX, which Glenn said it before, DivX was kind of like you could buy a disc cheap. You rented it. But you didn't have to return it, So you would basically have a DivX player, and you would pay for maybe 5 watches, and you held onto the disc, and it hooked up to your telephone line. And if you wanted to watch it some more, you had to pay a couple dollars and play it again. But the disc would actually decompose after a year or something like that. But then
I thought DivX was a compression standard,
but there was
because it came from the distribution.
Those guys,
correct. And then, of course, DivX was not a bad standard. So once the players died out, they released the codec, and then people like us got to benefit from it, from movies that you get online or something like that.
Yeah. So in the 90s, I ran a company, and I did some basically programmed a point of sale system and a health management system. And I got to go to Japan and Asia and everything like that. And the markets over there were just full of video CDs. You could buy all the latest movies, but I soon learned that they were nowhere near the quality that I already expected by that stage. Laserdisc were much
speaking
better.
of that right there, Pliskin Run said this statement: "I like to collect movies on DVD." This goes again to physical media, whether it be a game or a movie. I assume you agree because you have such a big collection. Streaming is not the same as having the physical copy.
No. Streaming is so disposable.
It's convenient, but yet you don't really own it or have it. You
watch a movie, you enjoy it, but you get that's all you get out of it, the enjoyment of watching that movie the once, right? You have to assume that if you want to watch it again, it's got to be available again. And as we're already seeing, Netflix, as an example, they might have something, and then after a while, they don't own the rights.
Gone.
They've only bought the rights for a little while, and it's gone.
Well, it's
Well,
like
you
all
want-
the Marvel movies ended up on Disney Plus, away from Netflix. Star Wars, all that stuff just scooted right over.
And you're having this with the games as well. So people are getting into pure, buying consoles without discs in them and getting purely digital games. And the companies can't keep running the service forever because in their minds it costs money. So they're going to turn them off, right? And everybody will be left with nothing. There'll be nothing to collect in the future.
Paul said something here. Isn't it true if the streaming service goes under, you may not keep your purchased copy? I can't see how you would. If it's streaming from a server and they go belly up, it's gone. You don't have a copy.
It's gone.
Even if you
don't
purchased it, even if you purchased it, it's gone. Don't get a physical copy.
And Glenn.
Yeah.
So yes, very very much a fan of physical.
Yeah,
media.
it's because also I've noticed like on Netflix and these other services, it may be here today and then they just pull it off the server, or they pull it off, the U.S. or Australian video, and you can't watch it anymore. I don't want that. When I want to watch something, I want to watch it.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. It's people are concerned with that with games in general too. If like if a company just gets rid of their store like Nintendo's been doing, they're like, well, what about all my stuff I purchased? Then they have to tell you, yeah, you could still go download it and stuff, but the store goes down completely. But you could still grab your stuff.
Right.
But still,
there are games you can be going through a special bin right now. Say you get a PS3 game. We'll use that as an example. There are examples on other consoles as well. You can get a PS3 game, you find it in a special bin. You take it home and you go to install it, and it needs something online that's not there anymore.
It's the worst feeling ever.
Yeah.
Here's an example that many people may not know. I mean, I love Battlestar Galactica, the classic show, and I love Space 1999, a show from 1975. There was actually a thing on YouTube. It was called Galactica 1999, where they had taken the original movie and a couple episodes of Space 1999, and it merged so friggin' well, the story. It was amazing. I watched it for years. I got a copy downloaded, and I told other friends about it, and it's gone. It was probably pulled maybe because of licensing issue with Universal. Universal is famous, almost as bad as Nintendo with that. Or maybe it was Jerry Anderson. I highly doubt it. He's usually pretty better. But those are things where they just take it away, and now you lost it. You're not going to see it again.
Yeah, and it's gone. Yeah.
Now we are running. The show is going fast. So I want to talk about your website as well, because you programmed a lot of games.
well, just wait. After we're gonna have him show his arcade.
Could do that too.
machines.
What do you want
we're
to do
gonna
first?
get
You want to show your arcade machines first?
Tony? You're the one to ask. You want to show your arcade machines first, or?
I can. I'm not sure how demountable my camera is. That's the only trouble for the setup.
Just rotate it and describe the stuff. So he's going to put you full frame here.
Berserk.
He's got a few.
Look at that. I already saw Berserk. I'm already happy. Berserk. Does it work?
So, Berserk's a little grumpy at the moment. It boots up, but the color board's not working. So it goes through a startup test sequence, and I get to the very last stage. The monitor works, but the game doesn't play at the moment. So, wonderful, robust, tough machine, but obviously the components are very, very, very old. I have this mini cabinet here, which I've made up as a Konami chassis and has Tutankhamun in it. You have the Bosconian labelled one there. I have a Bosconian board. That's actually a Nintendo Firebird cabinet, though.
That's the one tucked in the back there, beside Berserk, there on the right of everybody's screen.
This thing in the middle here is a custom cabinet built by my brother-in-law that has an MVS multi-slot, one slot in it. This
now,
one,
real quick,
got
Cammy is also in Australia. So you have a fellow Australian here. If you ever run into Cammy somewhere, she's a wonderful person. And she's down under.
Yes, I know Cammy.
Small country. Oh, yeah, I forgot.
going.
Australia's
Sorry.
a really
Go.
small country. I keep forgetting how small it is.
You've got the next cabinet over, which is like a generic arcade cabinet that was popular in Australia. You'd see lots of that style. Shall we say blown chassis at the moment. I have a virtual pinball, Attack from Mars, would love a real pinball. I have lots of cocktail cabinets, which I'm not going to be able to show.
What do you have in cocktail?
I have an original Space Invaders.
Oh, nice.
There it is.
With the colour sellotape.
With the wood
And a
grain
ColecoVision on top.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. As everybody has. Everybody should have a ColecoVision on top of their Space Invaders cabinet. Completely messed up.
Cammy says hello, Tony.
There you going.
And yes, everyone has seen Battle Beyond the Stars. It's so bad, it's good. It's one of those movies that's so bad.
Oh, Battle Beyond the Stars. Yes. Seven Samurai.
I'll have to
You've never seen Battle Beyond the Stars?
Maybe I did.
You got
but a
missed to
long
get that
time
Walton
ago,
kid
but,
in there. What was it, John Boy? I don't forget his name.
Yep, you got it in one. He was the main actor. Yes, it's the Seven Samurai.
Yeah,
in
with a
space,
$5
basically.
budget. It's awesome.
Correct. Yes, reuse model shots and everything like that from all other movies. They actually used physical footage from other movies for a lot of things.
Damn.
All right, so let's do
Okay,
this real quick. I also want
that's-
to pull up your website. So we're gonna drop you back down here to normal size. Bloop. There we go.
Ooh,
And
okay.
let's pull up your website. I believe I have it here. Is this it? Yeah, I got too many things. It must be this one. There we go. Boom. So this is Electronic Adventures and .net. I'll put this in the in the video information here. So tell us a little bit about your site here.
Well, it's of course written by using an engine by me because of course I write code for all sorts of things and have to do my stuff. So it's difficult for me to update because I have too many hobbies. But it's got all of my original games that I made back in the 80s. Most of them are downloadable. And you can see the original artwork flipping by there. So it used to be black and white in cassette tapes. That larger, nicely placed screenshot that my daughter did. One of my daughters is a photographer. Shows some of my more modern, new release stuff. I also have. I wrote a set of articles for several magazines. Ended up running one of the magazines for a couple of years, mainly as a vehicle to keep on selling my software.
Is the magazine
titles.
still in existence? Still publicating?
No. Somebody else took it over after me, and then MSX died out, so the magazine died out. But there are digital copies of every one of those magazines, including all of the club magazines, available from my website. There are a couple of issues missing here and there, so if anybody has physical copies of those, would appreciate the PDFs of those, so I can make them available for everybody. I've also written 2 books. First book is a programming and technical guide for the MSX and Spectre video machines, and I've written another book for programming games in assembler on the Coleco and Coleco Adam. And I have another version of that book coming out for the Spectre video first and the MSX a little later. I'm very conscious of getting the Spectre video stuff done and documented and out there, because there are a couple of nice technical compatriots who are in both the Ukraine and Russia, and I'm conscious that some of them could disappear.
I hope they don't come into Missile Command in that area. That would not be fun. Paul sent a super chat to you, Tony, asking, are you working any homebrew games right now? And if so, what systems are they for? Thanks, Paul. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So right now, I've basically, Berserk for the ColecoVision is pretty much code complete, been sent off a gold version to manufacture. There's been a late suggestion for a couple of minor little additions, so I'll probably do those. Main focus is a game that I've actually been working on for 3 years, is Sydney Hunter and the Caverns of Death for the original Nintendo. So I've been doing that for ColecoVision and mainly John
people don't know.
81.
Tell people about ColecoVision, because some people may not know about it. I mean, we do, but maybe other people don't.
Yeah. So ColecoVision have been around for a while. So as far as the homebrew scene, bar the MSX, the Coleco has one of the strongest and largest homebrew development scene. So it's had some of them. So other systems have homebrew that's produced for them, but it's not necessarily published in physical form. The publication of physical form for those other systems is probably more a last couple of years things. But ColecoVision have been producing physical copies of new Coleco games for quite a long time now. Probably the only other scene that has had physical homebrew copies for longer is probably the MSX scene itself.
Can you tell people what MSX stands for? Because people probably don't know what that means.
It depends on who you ask. If you ask Bill Gates, it's Microsoft Extended.
What's it really mean?
Nobody knows.
That's the one I always heard that Bill Gates was kind of taking. There was the Microsoft, like computer that people can use and have a standard. It was just a standard platform that could work interchangeably. If it said MSX on it, it was supposed to be compatible with other MSX devices.
Correct. Yeah. Whereas if you talk to Nishi, who is still around, and his company is called ASCII Corporation, and he still owns the rights to MSX, and he is actually working on an MSX4.
We need a mini. I want an MSX4 mini.
Well, technically they have, because once again, MSX 104 was the very first FPGA implementation of anything, because that's where the FPGA technology came from Japan, and the first machine that was made was the one-chip MSX.
Which is kind of neat.
So there is a model one-chip MSX.
I have MSX on my Mr. FPGA, and it works. I took your advice, Tony, and added those 2 programs to load the games properly.
Yes,
and
make
it
it
works
easier.
great.
See?
Yeah, it was a lot easier.
This makes you think. When people are saying like going into space, it's a waste of money. We get all this technology from the space program, right? The Acorn computer is where we got the processors in all our smartphones, and Apple's now even gone to, right? So it all came from a retro computer, and the FPGA, like you just said, came from a company, and the first thing they did was an MSX. So, see, people, being old and being retro technology
counts for something. And you almost gave our audience the middle finger.
Well, but there's the camera angle. There's the camera angle.
And if you want another cool fact for people who are also into space, you need to look at pictures of the main central core of the original Russian Soyuz space station. There are 2 MSX machines in clear view.
Oh, really?
In the main control center of that one.
That's I wouldn't do it. That's like sending somebody up in space with a Commodore 64 and having a bad power supply up there, and it would just die.
Well, it's better than the Amiga. Once you blow a CIA chip, what are you going to
do? You can't control anything. Mouse, keyboard don't work.
Oh, that's right. Glenn, there was a Stormville flea market. Anyone who lives around Stormville, the big, huge Stormville flea market is this weekend, and it's even been on like the Learning Channel. They do these flea market finds or whatever. Stormville flea market's always is there as well.
Is that the airport or
Correct.
Something like that?
It used to be an airport. Now it's...
Yeah, I saw it on TV, and I asked Glenn about it. And I was
I am literally like across the street from that place. I just told everyone where I live. So I'm like right across the street from this this flea market. So Glenn, if you're going to be there, we'll try and meet up this weekend. We'll try. It's supposed to be beautiful out, so maybe I'll actually see some sun. So I think we have to have Tony on again. He's got way too much stuff to talk about that we were able to squeeze into
to cram in an hour.
It's just not possible. So. And again, what is it, about 10, 11 o'clock now there, your time?
Yeah, 10 a.m. on a Saturday, and most of the family generally leave me alone on a Saturday. They've got other stuff to do, so it is a convenient time for me.
So wait, it's already Saturday morning, your time, right? Awesome. Listen, you got to do me a favor. Yeah. Stephen and I have been trying to hit the lottery for a long time. Can you get us the numbers? We'll play them. We'll split it with you, dude.
We'll write you a check. It won't bounce, I swear.
As I keep on saying, I'm Terminator from the future.
Yeah. Just don't show up in a parking lot naked. You'll be fine.
Well, listen, it was actually really good talk with him. Programming was something I did a long time ago, and I've well fallen out of BASIC. But you're doing a lot more. You're doing like machine level coding, right? Yeah.
So Z80 and 6502, and
all
that's the thing. Like before I made a multi. Nintendo World Championship cut for Gamester 81's first Arizona retro show that he did. So they wanted to recreate the Nintendo World Championships. And I'd been doing some homebrew stuff for CollectorVision, and John said, "Tony, would you be able to whip us up?" Virtually his words. This thing, I'd never programmed 6502 or anything for the NES at the time.
And not everyone knows
So in 3
Gamester 81. That's who you're talking about, John, Gamester 81.
Yeah. So in 3 months, I learned how to program 6502 and about the NES hardware, and cobbled together that cartridge, which has 3 games on it. So it's got a Sydney Hunter mini game, Pedal to the Metal, which was a racing game, and then I quickly converted my version of Asteroids from the MSX and Coleco over as the final game. They did actually want another game, but we ran out of time.
And speaking out of time, we're out of time tonight. So,
but we'll definitely
have you on
Tony,
again.
sure.
I think we could talk to you for probably hours, and we'll probably do that again next time. So, I want to remind everyone that it's 9 o'clock. The Super Game Room Dudes is starting up their show right now, so head over to them and tell them that Glenn, Steven, and Tony sent you over there. But in the meantime, remember, when you want to have a good time, how do you do it? And
Game
you kick
on.
it old school.
Game on.
That's
it
the
is.
big
You want to
saying.
kick it old school, too. So, everyone, thanks for joining.
We're going to trademark it soon there. So.
Have a great night, everyone.
Definitely kicking it old school.
Thanks, Tony, again for coming on with us. So for sure, appreciate it. And thanks
for
everyone
having
for
us.
watching.
Enjoyed myself.
Take care.
I probably should start ending the show, but why isn't it? It's not actually ending the show because I'm on the wrong thing. Duh.
At the Tiny Arcade fan page. Remember, don't admire people too much. They'll disappoint you.
Sit, Blue, sit. Good dog.
I would look at something and I'm like, what am I like? Why am I staring at this in